A lot of folks know Barcelona for the amazing food scene, beautiful architecture, and incredible art found throughout the city. But what many don't know is that there's an incredible wine region located less than an hour's drive away from Barcelona. Hi, friends. My name is Sarah. I'm a certified sommelier and host of the Wine CEO podcast. And today on the show, I'm giving you a sneak peek into Penedes, which is an amazing region in northeast Spain. A lot of folks are very familiar with the sparkling wine that comes from this region called Cava. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And I'm also going to share with you some of my tips and tricks for visiting the region. I had an amazing trip there about a year and a half ago. I know I'm a little late in posting all this content, but it was such a wonderful trip, and we had an amazing time in the region. So I'm really excited to share that with you all today. So let's go ahead and dive into my Penedes and Cava 101. So Penedes is part of Catalonia, and Catalonia is a region of Spain. It's in the northeast area, and there's really two main wine regions coming out of Catalonia. There's Penedes, which we're focusing on today, and then Priorat as well. So Penedes is very close to Barcelona, and to the north of Penedes, you have a mountain chain that reaches pretty far north, right up to the French border. And then to the east and south of the Penedes area, you have the Mediterranean Sea. So what you find throughout this small region is a lot of diversity. There's a lot of microclimates and really unique terroir that makes it a perfect place for sparkling wines, which is what this region is predominantly known for. Now, the major grapes grown in this area are Macabeo, Paralada, Zorello, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, Grenache, Muscat, Mourvedre, or in the area known as Monastrell, and then there are a whole bunch of other indigenous grapes that are grown here also. While the region is known for sparkling wine, there are definitely a lot of still wines that are made here, and there are some pretty famous producers that are making outstanding still wines. That said, the majority of the region is producing sparkling wine, and that is really what Penedes is known for. So in the 1860s, Don Jose Reventos, who is the father of Codorniu Winery, was traveling throughout Europe selling his Spanish wine. He stumbled across a little well-known region in France that was very famous for their sparkling wine, and he absolutely fell in love with champagne. And he decided that he needed to go back to Spain and create something very similar. So in 1872, he produced Spain's first sparkling wine made in the traditional method. So Cava is made in the traditional champagne method, where the secondary fermentation occurs in the bottle. And if you don't remember everything about champagne, that's okay. Hit pause and head over to my Champagne 101 episode. I've linked it in today's show notes so you can check it out. Champagne is a highly regulated wine. There's a lot that goes into the production method that makes it really unique. And so the process called the method traditionnelle, or the method champenois, is a very prestigious method of making sparkling wine. There's a lot of care that goes into it. And within the Champagne region, it's highly regulated to make sure that the product is high quality. And in Spain, this process is called the metodo tradicional. So Cava is made following the traditional Champagne method. But that's kind of where their similarities end. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes Cava so unique here. So first of all, Cava means cave or cellar in Catalan. And for Cava, it is regulated by the Cava DO, or the Denominación de Origen. And technically, Cava can be made in any of the 8 Spanish wine regions throughout the country. Now, most of the Cava is technically made in Penedes, like over 90% of Cava comes from this region, but it can be made outside of the region, and that's one of the big differences here. So Champagne is a place, and so it's also the name of the wine that comes from this place. Cava is not a place. Cava is the name of a wine. The region is Penedes. And so Cava, technically by law, again, regulated by the Cava DO, Cava can come from anywhere in Spain. It doesn't have to come from Penedes, but often most of the Cava that we find comes from Penedes because this region has become known for making most of it. One of the other big differences between Cava and Champagne is that Cava does not have to be hand harvested. So in Champagne, the producers must hand harvest all of their grapes. But in Cava, you can use machines to harvest some of the grapes. The grapes that are permitted in Cava, for white grapes, you have Zorello, Macabeo, Paralada, Chardonnay, and Subirat. For reds, you have Pinot Noir, Trepat, Garnacha, and Monastrell or Mourvedre, as we're more familiar with it. Now, the three main grapes that you're going to find in Cava often are Xarello, Parellada, and Macabeo. The interesting thing to note here is that all three of these Spanish indigenous grapes are white grapes. So it's very interesting to see that with Champagne, you have 2 red grapes and 1 white grape that are the 3 main grape varieties. There are others that are permitted as well. But with Cava, you have all 3 white grapes. And again, others are permitted, but those are the main ones that are often found in making Cava. And so this does create a very different flavor profile when you're looking at the 2 different wines. It also means that with Cava, you do find rosé styles where maybe there's Mourvedre or Pinot Noir that's blended in, but rosé is not as common with Cava. It's like less than 5%. Whereas with Champagne, you do have quite a lot of rosé styles, and you have some that are even a little bit of like a grayish kind of pink color, just a little bit of an off-white. And so you have a lot of different variety with Champagne that you may not necessarily always find with Cava. Additionally, you might remember that with Champagne, one of the requirements is that Champagne has to age on the lees, or the dead yeast cells. And there's a requirement in Champagne that the wine has to age on the lees for a minimum of 15 months. In Cava, you only have to have the wine age on the lees for 9 months. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There's Reserva Cava, which has been aged for 18 months on lees, and then there's Gran Reserva, which has been aged for 30 months on lees. Additionally, there's been an uptick in single parcel or single vineyard wines within Cava, and those sparkling wines must be aged for 36 months on the lees. Now, most Cavas will typically be dry or brut. You can sometimes find styles that are a little bit sweeter, but it's definitely not as common. And I would say that Cavas tend to be very affordable. They've been considered more of a table sparkling wine for many years, and there's been a reputation that Cavas can sometimes be hit or miss. Sometimes they can be really good, but sometimes they're very simple and not as complex as you would expect from a Champagne. And because of this, there's been a lot of criticism that it's just a simple, again, table sparkling wine, and it's great for a mimosa, but it's not necessarily something that you would be willing to spend a lot of money on for a special celebration. But the Cava DO, the regulatory organization that manages the designation for Cava, is really trying to combat this by putting in various regulations that require winemakers who want to call their wine Cava, making them focus more on quality over quantity. So reducing the amount of grapes that can be harvested in a specific acre or hectare, and then encouraging certain sustainability practices to make sure that the vineyards are producing the top quality grapes that are going to be able to make the best quality wines. But there are some producers that didn't feel like this was quite enough for them. They really wanted to go the extra mile because they felt like the Cava DO wasn't doing enough or as much as they wanted them to do to protect the reputation of the Penedes region and the wine Cava. They wanted to be able to, again, elevate this product that they're so proud of so that the world would feel that Cava was a high quality sparkling wine. And so in the early 2010s, there was a group of winemakers that came together and decided that they were going to leave the Cava DO. They were going to no longer call their sparkling wines Cava. And so in 2014, a group of wine producers came together and started calling their sparkling wines Classic Penedes. In order to call your wine a Classic Penedes, it must be 100% organic grapes grown from the Penedes region. You must be following the traditional Champagne method, and you must age your wine on the lees for 15 months. Remember that the Cava requirement is 9 months. And so they were looking to increase that standard and say that they were going to produce better quality wines by improving their standard of production for the sparkling wines. But then in 2015, there were a group of winemakers that came together and said, that is not even strict enough for us. We want to go one step further. Yes, we want to have grapes that are 100% sustainably farmed organic grapes from the Penedes region. Yes, we're going to have longer aging on the lees, but we're going to go 18 months instead of 15 months. We're going to require that our wines not only be made in the Champagne method, but also be made on the estate property where the grapes have been harvested. And we are going to require hand harvesting, just like the Champagne region requires. These winemakers are calling their sparkling wine Corpinat. So this is right now considered the most stringent or the most strict guidelines for producing sparkling wine in Spain. Now, there are only 11 wineries that are a part of the Corponat organization today, but they have added wineries since their inception in 2015. And the Corponat winemakers are also committed to using 90% of indigenous grape varieties in their sparkling wine. Many of these wineries are also biodynamic, so they are very much respectful of tradition, and they're really trying to make sure that they are committed to creating the top quality sparkling wines throughout Spain and mimicking a lot of that traditional champagne method, longer aging, hand harvesting of the grapes, in efforts to try and make some of the best sparkling wines, not just in Spain, but really in the world. Now, classic Penedes and Corponat must come from the Penedes region. So remember that with Cava, it can technically come from anywhere within Spain, even though most of it does come from Penedes, but classic Penedes and Corponat both must be from the Penedes region in order to fall within either of those guidelines. And again, you have the additional restrictions as well. But it's interesting to note that there are a lot of winemakers that are kind of debating with one another in the Penedes region about what is best. Cava has this world-known name right now. A lot of folks are familiar with the name Cava. Not as many folks are familiar with classic Penedes or Corponat. And so I think it's going to be up to those two organizations to really work on their marketing and helping consumers understand the brand so that they know what those terms mean. Because for many in the wine industry and for consumers in general, those terms are still not quite as well known. 2014 and 2015 were not that long ago, and so folks are still learning about these terms and the amazing quality wines that are being made that those winemakers are touting as higher quality than Cava. Now, it's important to note that just because these winemakers are taking some additional measures in production doesn't mean that the Cava producers that are still labeling their wines as Cava are not making outstanding wines. And again, in some instances, some of these Cava producers are aging their wines on the lees for 36 months or longer. Cava has vintage and non-vintage wines similar to the Champagne region. And so there are some amazing Cava producers that are making vintage wines. They're aging for 36 months or more on the lees, and they're making some phenomenal Cavas that are labeled as Cava DO. So it's interesting to note that, there's a lot of wines being made, and I think in the Penedes region right now, you really have to try a lot of different styles to see what you enjoy and maybe a particular winery or winemaker that you're really drawn to for their style, because there's a lot of diversity in the region right now, and you can't always just trust the name on the label to know if it's higher quality or not and if you're going to enjoy it or not. What you know from the classic Penedes and the Corponat wineries is that there are additional measures that are being taken in the production method that those winemakers feel are very important to match the quality and style of wine that they're trying to produce. But again, I don't want you to think that for Cava, just because the restrictions aren't quite as stringent, that it means that the wines are all lesser quality, because that's definitely not the case. There are some awesome Cavas that are being made as well. Honestly, that's kind of the main overview for the Penedes region. It's a smaller region in Spain, but it is known for its sparkling wine, and it's only about an hour from Barcelona. In fact, some areas of Penedes are a little less than an hour away. And I want to highlight this because I think a lot of folks traveling to Barcelona may feel like wine regions are so far away that it's not worth a day trip, or it's not something that they could fit into their trip. Let me tell you, I had so much fun in Barcelona, and I am so glad we did a day trip to the wineries in Penedes. We did an amazing tour. We went with a tour company that I've linked in today's show notes that had amazing tour guides that are all sommeliers or very experienced wine industry professionals, and they're so knowledgeable. And so our tour guide picked us up around 9 o'clock in the morning in Barcelona, and we drove out to the Penedes region. We had a quick tour around the area, got to see some of the cities, and then we got private tours at 2 wineries. We visited one that is a Corponat winery, and it was incredible to get to learn about Recaredo and learn about the amazing care that has gone into the production of sparkling wines there for many, many generations. So we got to tour the winery facility. We had a private wine tasting to experience many of their sparkling wines. So that was wonderful. And then we went to another winery that actually has mostly still wines. And so it was interesting to get to try still wines from the region. We went to Can Winery, and we got to do a wonderful lunch. We had tapas and some light lunch with their still wines and had a beautiful tour of that winery as well. So it was an awesome day, and we finished by 4 o'clock and we're back in Barcelona well before time to enjoy dinner and more time in the Barcelona area. So it was just such an easy tour, such a fun day, and it was a great way to get to see 2 really famous wineries from the region and to get a quick taste into what it has to offer. Now, we were staying in Barcelona, and so it was just the quick one-day trip that I got to do to Penedes, but honestly, I would go back in a heartbeat and I would spend even more time there. So I think if you're going to Barcelona, you could do 2 or 3 days in Penedes. You could visit Priorat as well if you wanted to, but honestly, I think that Penedes is just such a gorgeous region, and you have so many wineries so close to one another that you can pop around and do wine tastings pretty easily. Just like most other wine regions, you definitely want to book in advance, contacting the winery to book a reservation or booking through a private tour company so that you can make sure that the winery can be prepared in advance for your visit. I would say that when it comes to wine tourism, the area is still growing. So one of the things that I loved about going to Penedes is that the wineries were all really quiet. We didn't have to compete with large tour buses and lots of tourists that were there also trying to do wineries and jam-packed cellars for tasting. It was honestly a very private and intimate experience, which was wonderful. So if you're looking for a wine region that is a little more off the beaten path and is growing and is encouraging wine tourism and looking for folks to come visit, Penedes is definitely an awesome place to go. I think also because it's so close to Barcelona, whether you want to do 1-day trip or 2-day trips in a row, you could easily stay in Barcelona and get to experience the nightlife in the evenings and some of the culture and awesome things the city has to offer, and then be able to escape to the quiet region of Penedes and go do wine tastings in these beautiful regions where you just have rolling hills of vines and incredible views to see some historical vineyards that have been cared for many, many generations from the families of the Penedes region. So I hope today was just a fun overview of a region that maybe you didn't know much about. Maybe you had heard of Cava before, but you didn't know anything about classic Penedes or Corpinat. Maybe you've tried Cava before and you've always compared it to Champagne and you didn't know why they tasted so different. So hopefully today was a really fun overview so you could learn more about Penedes, more about Cava and the region, and maybe even get a little bit of a temptation to travel to Barcelona and take a day trip to visit Penedes as well. If you have any questions about today's episode or Cava or just wine in general, don't hesitate to send me a note. You can send me an email, sarah@thewineceo.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram @thewineceo. I am always happy to help, give any recommendations I can. Consider me your pocket sommelier. I'm here to help in any way I can in your wine journey. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to like and share it with a friend. If you haven't yet subscribed to my podcast, please do so now. Hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any upcoming wine content. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you can give me a quick 5-star review and write a note about why you love my show, I would appreciate it so much. That is one of the best ways for new folks to find my show, by word of mouth and by you sharing ratings and sharing the show. That is truly going to be the best way for others to get fun and approachable wine content delivered to them through the Wine CEO as well. Until next week, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all in the next episode of the Wine CEO podcast. Rebecca, what did you have to think about Can Bas Winery?
I loved all 4 of these, and I feel like that just doesn't happen when I'm doing wine tastings or a wine flight or something, but I legitimately I want to finish all of these.
We loved all 4.
I loved all 4 of them. They were so good.
The food was amazing.
Each
the wine
of them were
was
different, but unique and delicious, and I loved all of them.
Yes. Rebecca, would you like to tell everyone what just happened to me?
Yeah, it's probably too hard for you to talk about it. A bird pooped on her. In her
on my hair.
It was really small though, very, very small. She got it out. We're still walking.
Day one.
We poured water all over.
Hand sanitizer on my hands.
Yeah.
Because I had to pick it out, obviously.
So, it's fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Day 1 Barcelona. Come on.
We walked down.
Took a quick stop at St. Joseph La Boqueria. Got some juice.
Yes.
Some watermelon. It was an amazing food market. So cool. You have to stop there. Okay, so there were 3 things that we really wanted in Barcelona: tapas, paella, and sangria. We're making it happen.